Hello and welcome to Gender Forking, the Life and Death podcast.
I'm Lori.
And I'm Sam.
We should probably talk about...
Yeah, this is a very special episode brought to you by the failure of GarageBand.
Yay. Unlike the rest of our episodes, which were all recorded over the span of a week in May, today is August 18th. We have accidentally lost the recording to episode 2, and so we're going back at it.
Here we are. So that explains the probably difference in the sound of the audio, because I am here in the stew as always.
Yes.
In Maine, and then Lori has moved out to San Diego, so she's recording on an iPhone. We're at very different places in our technological advancements, so it's gonna sound great.
Not all of us have a famous brother SoundCloud artist.
Yeah, so we are going to entitle this episode "We Forked Up," even though it really wasn't our fault or my fault. It was just GarageBand deleting all my data.
Yeah. So thanks to our fans for being patient.
Yeah, thank you so much to our fans for supporting us in this difficult time. Please stick around even though the audio quality might be weird, because we are going to discuss chapters 1 through 4 of Life and Death, which are super interesting and really important if you're going to understand the rest of the book, because we are introduced to a lot of the major characters. So unlike the rest of our episodes where we chronologically obviously read the book, only knew what we had just read, we know what happens at the end of the book, and we're not going to spoil it in this episode. So we shared one copy of Life and Death, and that copy is Lori's, and it is in San Diego, and all of my copies of Twilight, plural, are boxed up right now because my parents are moving. So I actually have nothing in front of me, and I only have my memories of reading these 4 chapters. I'm really looking forward to being reminded of them.
And so I don't want to brag, but not only did I reread the 4 chapters because I had the ability to, but I also saved my notes from the first time, so I have 2 sets of notes. So hopefully
organized.
That will fill in the gaps. And it's almost like comical how many copies of Twilight I have at my disposal right now, because I have not only Life and Death and 4 copies of actual Twilight, I have the illustrated guide, also a couple PDFs downloaded onto my laptop so that I can read it at work.
Wow. A force to be reckoned with. The fashion of our show, we should do the fork cast before we begin. Actually, I'm not sure if we even did that in the first episode. The forecast is the forecast in Forks, the weather in Forks. It's really, you understand the pun. Okay, so right now it is 70 and sunny.
That's
in
fake.
Forks. It's so fake. They have it's sunny for a couple days. Here in Maine, though, it's cloudy and windy. It's very Forks vibes today.
Wow,
So.
Here in San Diego, I was outside earlier, and I think it was like 85 and sunny, which is like, it's been like that for the last, month. So,
Wow.
Not much variation. I live in
You're
the desert
basically,
now.
you're basically in Phoenix.
Yeah, essentially.
Let's get started. And
I'll read the preface, because I think that we did that. The preface is almost word for word identical to the preface of Twilight, but I'd never given much thought to dying, though I'd had reason to enough in the last few months. But even if I had, I wouldn't have imagined it like this. I stared across the long room into the dark eyes of the hunter, and she looked pleasantly back at me. At least it was a good way to die, in the place of someone else, someone I loved. Noble, even. That ought to count for something. I knew that if I'd never gone to Forks, I wouldn't be about to die now, but terrified as I was, I couldn't bring myself to regret the decision. When life offers you a dream so far beyond any of your expectations, it's not reasonable to grieve when it comes to an end. The hunter smiled in a friendly way as she sauntered forward to kill me. Chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
We talked about this a little bit in the first episode, I'm fairly certain. This is Renee taking Bella to Beau.
It's gonna happen.
Renee taking Beau to the airport, and Beau moving to Forks. So we talked about how Renee and Charlie are still Renee and Charlie, no gender swapping there.
Interesting.
But basically, the overall plot of this chapter, it goes through Beau's traveling, Beau arriving at the airport, Beau and Charlie interacting initially, and then Beau's first day of school.
Okay. thrilling.
So that's really it, but it's got a lot of exposition,
Yes.
physical descriptions,
Character development.
yeah, or lack thereof.
Yes. I feel like there's probably a lot that I blocked out of just the book in general. Like, when I go back to edit the rest of the episodes, I'm going to be shocked, but...
Right. I can't wait to listen to our own podcast.
Yeah.
And be like, no way.
Like, I didn't read that book.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some things that I can't forget, which is the Monty Python t-shirt. That
Absolutely.
our hero, Buford Swan, is wearing the first page of this book.
So let's unpack that.
Yeah.
So Beau says that he has on his favorite shirt, the Monty Python one with the swallows and the coconut that Renee got him for Christmas 2 years ago, and then it didn't quite fit anymore, but it didn't really matter because he wouldn't be needing t-shirts again soon. So at first when I read this, I think I was just so shocked by the fact that, like, Stephanie would do that to a character. And, like, it immediately just, like, sets Beau and Bella apart because, like, Bella in Twilight is wearing, like, a white lace tank top. That's not the same. Mm-hmm. And that's really what I focused on the first time I read it, but the second time I read it, I picked up the line, I wouldn't be needing t-shirts again soon, mm-hmm. which makes me think that Stephanie Meyer has never lived in a cold climate, because, like, you wear t-shirts year-round. Yeah.
She definitely owns a House and Forks. Didn't she write some of the Twilight series from like, her House and Forks that she bought?
Like, did she not go outside?
Beau has never been outside.
Beau's never been, canon.
Also, he's grown out of it because he's in puberty, apparently. Or, like, has passed puberty. Like, he's muscular now.
Yeah, so we can talk about, like, the physical description of Beau. The first big change is that Beau has blue eyes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bella has brown eyes.
What's good there?
What's going on? It says the same thing almost that it says in Twilight. In Twilight, it said Bella could have used Renee for a mirror. But then in Beau's mind, that translates to could have used Renee as a shaving mirror.
Oh my god, I forgot.
What's a shaving mirror? And then also, like, just say mirror, you coward.
Yeah.
It's a mirror.
Oh, wow. Mirrors are gendered now. And so is eye color, apparently. It's hard not to, like, to read it, like, since she did swap the gender, and, like, that's why she's swapped the gender, quote unquote. Like, that's why she's writing this book. It's, like, hard to be like, okay, well, the eye color has nothing to do with it, but, like, all these other things do, but she says that they don't. I feel very gaslit in general.
Like, if Beau were to turn into a vampire, it's just gonna make it harder for him to disguise his eye color change.
That's true. Yeah.
Because, like,
forget about
when Bella, like, has to put contacts in to cover up, like, the red in her eyes when she initially transforms into a transitions. I was like...
Transitions? Because this is gender forking.
It's kind of, like, talked about that, like, eventually Bella won't have to, like, really hide because, like, there's not as huge of a difference between, like, the gold to black range and brown as there would be from, like, blue to gold to black, like. And
I feel like if you put, I don't really know how contacts work. This is but, like, if you put brown contacts over red eyes, it just kind of looks kind of shitty. Yeah. But if you put, like, blue contacts over red eyes, like, I don't know how effective it is. I don't really know how contacts work.
I don't know how they work either, but I
am not an expert.
And also, like, I'm pretty sure that in Breaking Dawn, Alice talks about how, like, the contacts wear off really, really fast because the venom in their eyes, because all vampire body fluid is venom. Yeah. The venom in their eyes, like, eats up the contacts, like, way faster. Then, well, I guess, like, your normal eye fluid in humans would not eat up contacts, but they just dissolve in their eyes, which is wild.
I know. Anyway. Wow. So, careless mistake, I guess, on behalf of Stephanie Meyer.
I guess. Beau is talking in this section a lot about taking care of Renee, and mentions by name the chores of, like, cooking, dinner, grocery shopping, and paying the bills. Right. Which is consistent with Bella. Yes. And it seems to be, like, one of Stephanie's little I put my foot down. Men cook too moments.
Yeah, okay, now I am recalling the discourse around Renee and Beau's perception of her as like incapable.
Yeah, I felt like it was much more pronounced than like how Bella talks about her mom. I feel like Bella talks about her mom with like an underlying like tone of respect and love.
Yeah.
But like Beau's is like, she's not gonna make it on her own.
She can't do it. She doesn't know how to pay a bill.
So then we meet Charlie, some really fun like thought experiment that we've been working on, and I don't want to brag, but has gone pretty viral on our blog. I like to think of Charlie as a park ranger instead of a police officer. But it doesn't necessarily hold up in Life and Death, because in the airport in Port Angeles, so what happens is Beau is still clumsy, like Bella.
Yes.
And
he's lanky.
He's lanky, he's very tall.
I remember when we first recorded this, we didn't even talk about this part because we were so shocked as to like why it was in here, because it was so random and different, and then later we realized why it was in there.
Yeah. So we'll get there in a few episodes, but what happens in this airport, which I was struggling to remember from Twilight, and it's just because it doesn't exist in Twilight.
Yeah.
Is that Beau is clumsy and like handing the one of his duffel bags to Charlie, gets thrown off balance and hits someone trying to come through the door to the airport. Stephanie doesn't say that these people look sketchy, but she describes the guy that Beau runs into as wasn't much older than me, a lot shorter, but stepped up to my chest with his chin raised high. I could see tattoos on both sides of his neck. A small woman with hair dyed solid black stared menacingly at me from his other side. So this guy's like stepping to Beau. So the woman says, "Sorry," she repeated, like my apology had been offensive somehow, and Beau's like, yeah. And then the woman looks at Charlie, who's in his police uniform, and Charlie doesn't say anything. He looks at the guy, who backs up a half step, and then the girl pouts and they duck behind them and then head into the terminal. So that's something that's been added since Twilight.
Yeah, it's very interesting if you have read Twilight, because you're like, why
what
the
fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some names that come up.
Who do we meet first?
The first person that's mentioned by name is someone called Bonnie Black.
I honestly forgot these names. I was trying to remember the names of Beau's human friends the other day, and I literally don't remember what they are, so this is great.
Yeah, I really don't remember a good amount of them. And so Bonnie Black is the single mom of 3. Billy Black, gender swapped equivalent.
Yes, so Bonnie is Charlie's friend who is lives on the Quilly Reservation.
Jacob Black, or whatever the equivalent of Jacob Black will be in Life and Death, because we don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
This is Jacob's mom.
Yeah. Does it describe her as single mother of 3 in the book? Okay.
It says,
I was gonna say.
It says, "Do you remember Bonnie Black down at La Push?"
Do you remember Bonnie Black, single mother of 3?
Do you remember Bonnie Black, single mother of 3? That's just how I described her in my notes. That comes up because Beau is gifted a truck by Charlie, who buys it from Bonnie, who can no longer drive it because she is now disabled and is in a wheelchair.
This is where the truck comes in. So it's coming back to me again, like images of Beau in this truck. It's the same truck that Bella gets.
Yeah.
It's big and old, looks kind of like run down, but also very sturdy. Red? ? Red, yeah. And with Bella, it's such a look, and it's kind of interesting to be juxtaposing this new character into the same context, into an image that's like honestly so iconic.
Yeah, and it makes me think something that I never really thought before, which is like, what did Bella drive in Phoenix?
That's true.
She knows how to drive, so...
She does, that's true.
Maybe she was just driving her mom's car. She, like, driving a Subaru. Was she driving, you know?
Yeah, interesting. Probably a Subaru.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so, like, the truck just makes Bella different. Like,
yeah.
It sets her apart from her classmates, like, as soon as she pulls into the parking lot, and she knows that.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Beau is just another, like, tall, lanky white boy in a truck.
Yes, whereas Bella's, like, supposed to be, like, small and fragile.
Yeah.
And the juxtaposition is supposed to be, like, jarring.
The truck itself isn't, like, what sets Bella apart. Because, like, Bella and Beau both mention that, like, a lot of the cars at the school are just, like, not great cars. And like that's why the Cullens cars, like the Jeep and the Volvo, they stand out. So like this truck is just like, okay, whatever, you kept it the same, but like it doesn't immediately make Beau like another like layer of weird in the same way that it made Bella.
I don't know what would be more fitting, like a tiny car.
Yeah, right.
I don't
like
know.
A smart car.
Yeah.
So something that you picked out the first time we read this and I wrote down is that there's no mention of Beau's like any hobbies or anything. The only like stuff we have for him is like that he takes care of Renee.
Right. Isn't there a passage about that? I don't know if he explicitly says that like he's been so busy taking care of Renee that he hasn't developed any hobbies, or is that even in this section?
Yeah, unlike the other guys, I didn't have a ton of free time for hobbies. I had a checkbook to balance, a clogged drain to snake, a week's groceries to shop for. So I didn't relate well to people my age. I didn't relate well to people, period. Even my mother, who I was closest to of anyone on the planet, didn't understand me. Because he goes on to say, like, there was a glitch in my brain. When I smelled vinegar, they smelled coconut. When I saw green, everyone else sees red. It just kind of feels like it's setting up that, like, narrative that is revisited, that, like, this person was not meant to be a human, and, like, so it feels very strongly that, like, they were born to be a vampire.
In the same way that Bella is, I think that's a really beautiful characterization, and like fills in a lot of the gaps as to why Bella doesn't have any hobbies. There's not an equivalent paragraph in Twilight, I believe, that like explains that, but it makes sense. But also in Twilight, we don't really have the same sense of like Bella actually needing to take care of Renee. It's more like there's a sense of kinship with Renee that's more like a friendship and less like a parent-child relationship.
So at this point, the first time I read Life and Death, we kind of stopped to talk about how visually we pictured Beau.
Yes.
And I was struggling to place him with
I've been thinking about this actually.
An actor or something, a famous person.
We came up with Logan Lerman, and I think it's the guy from Love, Simon.
Yeah. We just talked about that recently. The guy from Love, Simon.
I've been seeing his face around Tumblr recently. I'm like, yeah, that's 100% what Beau's looks like.
Like, he's pretty tall. He's not like super muscular, and he's like not into sports, and he's not super coordinated. But like he's still
I feel
pretty,
like
conventionally attractive. But like,
I feel like I'm 100% willing to bet all the money that I own that if a movie were to be cast today of Life and Death, that they would cast that guy as Beau, because he's like popular enough and like fits the bill.
Also, then it would be like, we could just cast Robert Pattinson as Edward and have gay Twilight.
Yes, which is my favorite.
Though I would definitely prefer like a Bella Edith story.
Speaking of Edith, do we meet her soon? We have to have our first day at Forks first.
We do, but the first thing that comes up when we talk about high school is this line that is... It won't be that bad, I lied to myself. Seriously, though, this wasn't a life and death situation. It was just high school.
I love that.
It's not like anyone was going to bite me.
Yes! I love that.
Okay. So that's her title drop. Not sure if that's a Twilight line that Stephanie revisited and was like, oh, life and death. Or if she plugged that in there to, like, contextualize the title. But then immediately we do get some friends' names, and we get to the Cullens and the lunch scene.
I'm remembering something. Bella's first night in Forks, she cries before she goes to sleep, just sort of processing the emotions of the move and moving away from her mom and like going to a new school and like whatever. She's 17, it's a big deal. Beau does not cry.
No, Beau does not cry. He just says that he has like a restless sleep. So we meet Erica. And
Erica. I could have guessed
Jeremy. Which is Eric and Jessica. Their characters are... There's really not much to talk about, like, yet with that.
Yeah, that's true.
But as I think there will be going forward, because at this point, Beau's just, like, struggling to remember their names. But then Beau just has, like, an uneventful morning at school. And then the physical descriptions of the Cullens come up during lunch.
Lunchroom scene.
So before we even know their names, we get their descriptions of them, which kind of leads you to try to, like, guess
Who's
which
who.
one is which.
Maybe just to refresh those listening at home who might not be so familiar with Twilight, maybe we can overview who the Cullens are in Twilight, maybe just their names.
But we've got the love interest of Bella in Twilight is Edward, of Team Edward fame. And then we have the two parents, who aren't mentioned here, but it's good to know, because, well, they're kind of mentioned. Carlisle and Esme. Carlisle is a doctor in Forks.
And Esme is his super kind wife.
Yeah, and so Esme doesn't have a job attributed to her. She's just like this really fun stay-at-home mom. Yeah. We've got siblings. We've got twins, Jasper and Rosalie Hale.
They're not actually twins, but
they're not actually
they decide
twins,
to pose as them.
But they're presented as twins. Emmett and Alice Cullen.
Yes, those are the names.
The reasoning behind making Rosalie and Jasper siblings is because Emmett and Rosalie and Jasper and Alice,
they're in relationships.
Dating. It's to make it less weird, I guess, for everyone at school and everyone in the community, I guess, like, that perceives them as siblings, that they have, like, distinct last names. They're all adopted anyway, but so they're described as really beautiful.
Even in their gender-swapped, quote-unquote, form, they're quite captivating, but their physical descriptions are really different, not in terms of hair color, but in terms of, like, body build.
I think it's worth reading them.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. Okay, first of all, wait. These names are, like, they're really something.
These names are...
I think I threw up when I first read them.
Yeah. I was so shook.
And who introduces them? Is it Jeremy?
So this is just Beau kind of, like...
Oh, he's just looking at them. Okay.
And then, so when Beau is just, like observing them physically, says that there are 3 girls. One was super tall, even sitting down, maybe as tall as I was, and her legs went on forever. She looked like she might be the captain of the volleyball team, and I was pretty sure you wouldn't want to get in the way of one of her spikes. She had dark, curly hair pulled back into a messy ponytail.
Okay. Emmett is... Wow, I don't even remember. Oh, wait. I was thinking the wrong name.
Do you want to guess?
Wait. Oh, wait, it's Eleanor?
It's Eleanor. So Emmett is Eleanor. And then we've got another girl, had hair the color of honey hanging to her shoulders. She was not quite so tall as the brunette, but still probably taller than most of the other guys at my table. But not Beau.
But not Beau.
Because he says most of the other guys at my table.
Yeah, because they're shrimpy and he's not.
It was kind of weird, but for some reason she made me think of this actress I'd seen in an action movie a few weeks ago, who took down a dozen guys with a machete. I remember thinking then that I didn't buy it. There was no way the actress could have taken on that many bad guys in one, but now I thought that I might have bought it all if the character had been played by this girl. This is a Confederate soldier assassin, Jasper Hale. Do you remember Jasper's name?
Yes, I will never forget. Yeah. Jessamine Hale.
Jessamine. Reflecting on that, at first, I think my first reaction was, what the fuck?
This is one of the weirdest names. Jesssamine.
So that doesn't make sense from a trying to blend in standpoint. No. But I think it does make sense from a southern standpoint.
Is it a southern name?
Would I still, like, pause and say, like, that's a weird name? If I heard someone named Jessamine in the South, yes, but I would be like, makes sense.
Sure, okay.
Like, Jessamine is, like, the name of someone who would, like, go to a cotillion and, like, have, like, a debutante ball when she turns 16.
Is Jasmine not?
You're right. Jasmine, I feel like Jasmine has, like, connotations of, like, I don't know any white Jasmines.
Yeah, maybe it has.
I feel like it's got, like, connotations for people of color.
It's like, make Jessamine black, I dare you.
Yeah,
coward
make Jessamine black and not a Confederate soldier.
Please. The action movie comment that Beau makes about Jessamine is really interesting. The fact that Beau watches action movies is, like, a little bit startling because it feels like Bella explicitly doesn't do that, especially because in New Moon she goes to see an action movie to distract herself from her depression because Edward left her. Spoiler alert. So that's just an interesting choice that he likes action movies.
The last girl was smaller, with hair somewhere between red and brown, but different than either, kind of metallic somehow, a bronzy color. The word you're looking for is ginger. she looked younger than the other two who could have been in college easily. So that's all we really get for Edith.
Yes, that is Edith, our main love interest. For all of us reading this, we're all in love with her.
We're all in love with Edith.
Yeah.
So then we go into the descriptions of the two guys who will shake you up, really.
I think Jessamine was the most jarring at first. I think now, after time, these two names of these two men they just stay with you, you know?
Yeah, totally. So the two guys were opposites. The taller one, who is definitely taller than me, I guess 6'5" or even more, was clearly the school's star athlete and the prom king, and the guy who always had dibs on whatever equipment he wanted in the weight room. His straight gold hair was wound into a bun on the back of his head, but there was nothing feminine about it. Somehow it made him look even more like a man. He was clearly too cool for this school or any other that I could imagine.
Has Beau ever been in a weight room? Is he just saying things at this point?
It's like, he definitely should not have ever been in a weight room.
Like, there's no way that makes any sense.
So, this is the equivalent of Rosalie, which is...
Royal! Royal hail.
It's a little on the nose to just be like, royal. Like, he's fancy.
Yeah. I feel like,
you know,
there's gotta be another R name.
Yeah, like Robert.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah, Bob. Bob Hale.
Yeah.
Bob Hale. Hale refrigeration.
Bob Hale. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. The thing that you said when you read this the first time was that, I'm gonna confuse the Hemsworths, but it's Chris, right?
Yeah.
The guy that plays Thor.
Yeah, it's like a Chris Hemsworth vibe.
Just like fucking huge and like undeniably masculine, but also has a man bun.
Yes.
And like long golden
like manly
hair.
enough to have a man bun, like for it not to be feminine, according to Beau. What I'm learning so far in these first few chapters of Life and Death is that manliness and masculinity is very, very tied to height.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. Which is interesting because I think that Stephanie really tries to masculinize Beau.
Yeah.
And like in a way that she didn't try to feminize Bella. Like Bella is.
Yeah, Bella doesn't like very. Wow, okay. So Bella doesn't wear makeup, and like her non-femininity is supposed to set her apart from other girls. I guess in that way you could argue that she's more masculine, I guess in sort of a binary way. That it might be viewed as, even though she's not manly, but she's less feminine, like taking away things that about femininity that might be perceived as bad. But Beau is supposed to inherently have these masculine traits, so both Bella and Beau are supposed to be like more masculine in order to seem different from other people or like better than other people. But it's also like this is another thing that I'm noticing is that I feel like Bella didn't necessarily call attention to the way that she looked in her narration, and Beau is doing it a lot to set himself apart.
Oh yeah. He's like, I'm taller than them, I'm different than them.
Yeah, with Bella, it was more like, I'm clumsy and, like, I feel really weird right now.
So, the last column, the shorter guy was wiry. His dark hair buzzed so short, it was just a shadow across his scalp. That's all we get except for the traits that they share. It's saying, like, totally different, and yet they were all exactly alike. Every one of them was chalky pale, the palest of all the students in this sunless town, paler than me, the albino. No, you're not. They all had very dark eyes. From here they looked black. There were all deep shadows under their eyes, purple shadows like bruises. Their noses, all their features were straight and angular.
Spoiler alert, they're vampires. In case you didn't know.
Yeah, so like, they're vampires. Beau decides that the most beautiful of all is the smaller girl with the bronze-colored hair. And then says something slightly different than what Bella says in Twilight. Because Bella in Twilight is like, I truly cannot decide who's more beautiful. Yes. The blonde girl, Rosalie, or the
bronze-haired boy, Edward.
And she's like, I don't know which is more beautiful. They're both so stunning. Yeah. And you're like, okay. And then in here, Beau is like, I decided that the most beautiful of all was the smaller girl with the bronze-colored hair, though I expected the female half of the student body would vote for the movie star blonde guy. Stephanie probably like went back, read the original line, and was like, gayness in my book?
That was a mistake.
No. Yeah.
I don't think we got Alice's gender swapped name. That last vampire is
You're right.
Archie. Which I like that name, to be honest.
I don't mind it as much anymore, and I think that Riverdale might have something to do with it. So I wrote down that the buzz cut that is given to Archie is like, it's not the same, like, it's not the male equivalent of a pixie cut, because a pixie cut is this very, like, it's like a daring move, and like people are like, usually it's a big
it's not just short hair.
Yeah, it's not just like
it's because of your gender.
Short hair. I feel like there are a lot less people with pixie cuts, a lot less women with pixie cuts than there are men with buzz cuts. And buzz cuts, I also feel like, kind of give off this, like, vibe of, not military...
Discipline?
Like, discipline. Yeah, discipline. And, like, really, like, buying into the system. And, like, people with buzz cuts are, like, people in the military. People with buzz cuts are, like, people that are, like, no-nonsense people. And, like,
or people who are sick, either because they've lost their hair, like, from chemotherapy, or, like... Yeah, in Twilight, we know from the Twilight universe that Alice's backstory is that she was in some sort of mental asylum before she was changed into a vampire, and it's theorized that her hair is short because of that. It's like a form of control.
So it's interesting because, like, it definitely comes out of the same place.
Yeah, I guess, like, short hair in general on men can be a form of control, especially if it's military, but I feel like, I don't know genuinely the history of hair and men in mental asylums in the 1920s.
I don't either, really. We get another name that's not a Cullen. We get Angela equivalent. Do you remember that one?
Oh, no. No. Wait, it's gotta be easy.
It's a normie name.
It's a normie name. An A, it's not Adam.
It's Alan.
Alan. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get to this, like, part where Alan and Beau walk into biology. If you can picture in the film Twilight, the piece of cinema, Robert Pattinson clutching, like, the table
every
and, like,
muscle in his
the
body.
stool and jumping back.
Covering his nose.
And there's a really cute moment in Twilight where Bella says, I was, like, thinking, like, did I smell? But, like, I smell my hair, and, like, I'm pretty sure that I washed it, and I used my strawberry shampoo.
Right.
But Beau does not mention strawberry shampoo, and instead is like, I'm pretty sure I just smell like a laundry detergent, so I don't know what her deal is.
Yes. So Beau, what I'm gathering, because if this is just the equivalent of washing your hair, I guess Beau doesn't use any soap, because men don't participate in personal hygiene. There was nothing that she could have replaced that with. Nothing.
Beau has never showered.
He's never showered. He doesn't even use cologne. He really, truly is not like other men.
He doesn't use aftershave. Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing.
Really sets
no
him apart.
deodorant.
He's just a really crunchy, gross
he's a
person.
granola kid.
He, like, rubs laundry detergent into his skin every night.
He just eats Tide Pods.
Yeah. The scene really plays out the same as it does in Twilight, where they talk as little as possible, and Edith jumps up as soon as the bell rings.
She's having this extremely adverse reaction to something about him.
The one thing here to note is, like, this completely insignificant plot-wise moment where in the narration before this point, Edith is spelled Eidith.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That was weird.
And it really threw me off because I was so certain that it was Edythe, and I'd seen it written like that in the internet, like, all the time. And so I was like, what the fuck? And so then there's this moment where Beau looks down at Edith's paper and is like, her handwriting's so pretty, and I realized that in my head I'd been spelling her name wrong, and I was like, that? You did that?
It's a really interesting choice to put in the book.
Yeah. It's just kind of like Stephanie, like, taking a nod towards, like, yeah, I made these names weird.
Yeah.
Like, what you gonna do about it?
Yeah, that's a really strange spelling in Edith.
Oh, we get, Mike Newton's name.
Oh, Michaela,
yeah. So, that's really it for Chapter 1. That's, like, a lot.
Mm-hmm. We met a lot of people.
Because it's really... And then Chapter 2 is called Open Book. And the plot of Open Book basically is just, like, Beau continues to go to school.
Time passes?
Go through the daily routine.
Yeah.
Some time passes. A good chunk of time passes because there's a few days in a row where, like, Beau is, like, kind of, like, every day's the same now, but it's also because Edith is not in school.
Yes. So there's been a strange occurrence where Edith acted really weird and then disappeared.
Later in the chapter, Edith is back and starts being, like, friendly with Beau,
Right.
and they do that lab in biology.
Yes.
There's, like, a few OCD mentions that are pretty irresponsible on the part of Stephanie. I just want to say that they're irresponsible because, like, it's not a real symptom of OCD. It's just, like...
He just says,
Beau
I'm
being, like...
OCD. Like, oh, I like things organized, I'm OCD, which is, like... Please stop.
Yeah, but I think that that's Stephanie, like, that's what something she mentioned in the preface, is that Beau has, like, more of a tendency towards really wanting things, like, organized and in their places, and that was, like, a character difference between Beau and Bella.
Which is
okay.
Interesting. I never got the sense that Bella was disorganized in any way.
There's a couple casual mentions on Beau's part of, like, depression, where he's like, I remember when I was a kid that Charlie, he would never keep the bullets in his gun when he walked in the door when I was a kid, but now he considers myself old enough to not shoot myself by accident and not depressed enough to shoot myself on purpose.
It's a very flippant comment.
Yeah, and I'm like, you okay?
Yeah, you okay, bud?
There's a really tragic loss on our part that when Charlie is talking about Dr. Cullen,
yes,
who is still not mentioned by first name.
Yeah, we don't learn her first name.
In Twilight, it's this really hilarious moment where Bella's kind of, like, confiding in Charlie, like, oh, like, these Cullens, like, they keep to themselves and everyone just kind of thinks that they're, like, outsiders and whatever, and Charlie's just like, they should feel lucky that the Cullens have decided to settle in our town, and, like, the doctor is, like, first of all, so handsome, and second of all, like, he could be doing medicine anywhere, but he's here, and it's this beautiful, like, homoerotic Carlisle
It's beautiful.
and Charlie moment.
It's so wonderful.
In this, you lose that.
Because Dr. Cullen is now a woman, and now it's just like, okay, stop talking.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, next.
Yeah.
Edith comes back, they're chatting.
Beau is, like, reasonably freaked out, I guess, that this happened. Did we find that this conversation that Beau and Edith have is, like, kind of similar?
It is similar, except for it maintains the line ladies first, but instead of Edward pushing the microscope to Bella in this lab scenario, it is Edith pulling the microscope towards herself and saying, ladies first.
I love that. Okay. Which really changes things, because in Twilight we learned that, like, Bella is quite intelligent and can keep up with this material that, like, obviously Edward knows because he's, like, gone to med school, but she can do this work herself and, like, is identifying a lot of the lab answers without Edward's help. But now in Life and Death, Edith is the one doing a lot of the work and Beau isn't really doing anything. So I feel like that was a theme throughout the book, that Beau isn't as intellectual as Bella, or at least not intellectual, but, like, isn't as, like, school smart, isn't as, like, into school. He
just seems like a little bit, like, more helpless, and just, like, everything is happening, like, around him, and he's just being kind of, like, swept up to it. Whatever.
Yeah, I know there's a line in Twilight where the teacher, which has now also been gender swapped, comes up to Edward and is like, hey, like, let Bella do some of the work too, and Edward's like, oh, actually she identified 3 out of the 5. But that doesn't happen, I think, in Life and Death.
Yeah, there's a little moment where Mrs. Banner is like, hey, Miss Cullen, perhaps you should let Mr. Swan have an opportunity to learn. And then he says, like, at least the slide wasn't difficult, it's metaphase, I said. But there's no moment of, like, he doesn't check up on them again in the same way that Mr. Banner does. The only last thing that's really different in here, we get a lot of exposition of, like, talking about why Beau left Phoenix and left Renee and Phil. But the only real difference it's not a difference, but I perceived it as different, is that when Beau is, like, describing how perfect Edith looks, it's, like, a lot more believable to me. Just because, like, it sounds like how I feel about, like, every single girl that I've ever met.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, she's flawless, like, whatever. But then it's more shocking to me in Twilight when Bella's like, he's perfect. I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? He is? Yeah. And so I thought that was just something that made it readability wise like a little bit different.
Yeah, I think the same goes the other way for Beau. It's that like some of these things about him as the book unfolds, just the way that he is, or I don't know, not necessarily the way that he looks, just the way that he is like kind of less believable for like a 17-year-old boy, and in a way that isn't, I don't know. I guess that's maybe the point, is that he's like rare TM. He's different character-wise in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense just because of like, I don't know, I had to take care of my mom and stuff, even though he didn't actually have to do that. And maybe that's, I don't know if that was a thoughtful, purposeful decision on behalf of Stephenie Meyer, like her deciding that like, well, for this to be believable, like Renee has to be more helpless in this version. And like he has to have more responsibility to have the same maturity that Bella has.
Maybe bridging like the immaturity gap and like
the way that boys and girls are raised.
Boys and girls, yeah, totally. So that's really all for chapter 2, which brings us to chapter 3, Phenomenon.
Ooh, wow, we're already there.
Hashtag car crash scene.
Okay.
We get 2 names in this chapter, which are Tyler.
Taylor. Gender neutral name.
And and we get, since Dr. Cullen is in this chapter, we learn Dr. Cullen's first name.
We do? Already?
Yep.
It's, we don't really know how to pronounce it still, but we've been saying Corrine.
Corrine, Carine.
I don't think it's Corinne.
I don't think so either. Corinne. So honestly, I don't have very many notes for chapter 3 because it's so action heavy.
Yeah, that's true. You gotta take it all in.
That, it's just really like plot, and that would be that, for those not familiar, for those who haven't been forced to watch Twilight with us 9 million times.
You're missing out. Number
you're
1, you're missing out.
Yeah. Number 1, fix that as soon as possible. The car crash scene. So Taylor spins out of control on a sheet of ice in the parking lot.
And Beau is just sort of like minding his own business by his car.
And so Edith is standing across the parking lot, like at her Volvo, and as the car is like about to like smash into Beau, she comes over and like pushes the car, dents it, and then stops Beau's head from smashing against the concrete.
Like completely saves his life.
Literally saves his life.
Using her vampire skills to be fast and strong. Obviously, this is like a startling event.
Beau is like, I must be more traumatized than I realized because I couldn't move Edith's arm from like where it was holding me against her body, like at all. Was I weak with shock?
That's funny, I didn't notice that first time.
Yeah. So he's like, I can't move this girl's arm off me. So
we go to the hospital after this, right?
Yeah, the only difference I think is like, Beau kind of like glances over at the siblings, the Cullens, and says that like their expressions range from disapproval, Eleanor, to fury, Royal, but held no concern for their little sister's safety. Rosalie in Twilight is definitely like seen as the most cold.
Yes.
And not necessarily the most frightening, because I think that, like, Bella's more afraid of Jasper. But I think that the combination of the way that Royal is described in this book physically as, like, this giant, like, ripped guy, and the fact that we know that Rosalie is the one that gives off the most menacing glares, and, like, it's, like, not about this whole relationship that is starting, kind of, like, combines to make him just like purely terrifying.
Yeah, it's like a new level of threat, because with Bella and Rosalie, the threat was never physical. Through his physical descriptions, Beau really adds a physical element to Royal, and like him being big and strong, and on top of that, like furious and like capable of probably beating him up even without knowing that he's a vampire. So that is a really interesting element to add to that relationship.
This is not related to Royal. It's more about Eleanor, but like, you know that picture from the set of Twilight where Emmett is holding that bag of eggs. I just like to picture like Eleanor doing that.
Yeah, because like, she's like beefing up on, I don't know, protein.
She's like, it's like that picture is so indescribably like out of place anyway. It's like, who put the eggs in a bag and was like, this is a good idea. Yeah, and another difference is like Beau for describing Kareem Cullen, says that she was more beautiful than any movie star, young, blonde, like someone sliced up Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, and Marilyn Monroe, took the best parts and then glued them together to form a goddess.
It's almost like Stephenie Meyer, she doesn't know how to relate to describing a beautiful woman, and so she's just doing it through how she thinks men, like, experience it.
Yeah, she just,
as
like,
if,
is so straight.
Yeah, like, as if men are like, oh, Audrey Hepburn, the perfect woman in 2005.
They're like, oh, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, really
like,
reminiscing.
As if it's not, like, women that are sharing pictures of Marilyn Monroe and Audrey Hepburn and being like, man.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
Yeah.
So strange.
Yeah.
That's really it. There's really no difference. It's a lot of, like, you hit your head, but you're fine.
Yeah.
There's the conversation between Edith and Beau of, like, don't fucking tell anyone, and Beau's like, okay, like, I wasn't going to, but, like, what is up with you? And I think they leave it on a note of, like, they're not gonna be friends, and, like, it'd be better if you stayed away from me.
Yeah, that kind of talk. What's chapter 4?
Chapter 4 is invitations. So Taylor Crowley is, like, following Beau around and, like, freaking out and is like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Edith is in class, but they're not speaking. They're just kind of coexisting quietly. Michaela asks Beau to the girls' choice dance.
Right. It's still a girl's choice.
It is. Well, actually, what happens is slightly different. It's Jeremy talking to Beau and saying, like, has anyone asked you to the dance yet? It's girl's choice. Beau's like, no, and then Jeremy's like, oh, do you think Michaela's gonna ask you? And Beau's like, I hope not. And then Michaela is like, Jeremy said you don't go to dances. I thought he was making it up because I think that he wants me to ask him. And Beau's like, well, you should, because Jeremy's great. And so Michaela's like, can I ask you? And he's like, no, really, don't. And then...
So this is a chapter where, like, he gets asked 3 times to the dance?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's Erica. Erica straight up comes up and is like, I was wondering if you want to go to the spring dance with me at the truck. And Beau's like, no, I'm not going to the dance, Erica. I'm going to be in Seattle. It's the only day I can go.
Right.
And then Edith drives her Volvo behind the truck, traps Beau into this situation with Taylor Crowley, where Taylor's like, can you go to the dance with me? And Beau's like, I'm not going to be in town.
Yeah, so he's been asked to this girls' choice dance 3 times by 3 different people in this day. And this is really interesting because in Twilight, it is also a girls' choice dance, so it should be Bella's choice to ask someone that she wants to go with. And so in Twilight, she has 3 guys ask her to ask them to go to the girls' choice dance, which is quite... It's a little bit different because it's like in that situation it's a little bit more annoying, like they're inserting themselves where they like kind of don't really have any right to be, and I feel like in this situation it's less annoying and I have more sympathy for these girls.
It's also like there's no real threat of like, not that there was really anything too intimidating about Eric and Mike, but there's no like real threat of violence because like
rejection is often gendered.
Like Beau doesn't have to think about like, oh, like, is this safe for me to be rejecting these people?
How easy do I have to let them down? Like,
and he does it somewhat out of like, he tries to let them down a little easier out of kindness. And out of being afraid of hurting their feelings. And Bella is kind of just like, how do I get them to leave me alone? And how do I like really set the story straight so like they don't ask me anymore.
And it feels more innocent when it's just these girls who are like trying to have a date to the girls' choice dance, and they're just like, okay, like, thanks, like,
and they're not really and they're not really in competition with each other in the same way that you get competition between Mike, Tyler, and Eric because they're all like, please ask me and not them. And, like, these girls are like, will you go with me? And towards the end of the chapter, Beau and Edith start talking in a more friendly way again, but in the beginning, they're just ignoring each other. Beau makes, like, this comment that Edith doesn't wear makeup, which, like, first of all, if I was a vampire, I would absolutely wear makeup. Not only for, like, cosmetic reasons, but also just because, like, with a full coverage foundation, I feel like you can block out a lot of the sparkling on your face, and you can cover a lot out.
You can make yourself look
like,
less
of
pale.
other stuff with clothes. Yeah, you can bronze your skin and, like, blend in better. Why does no one do that? Anyway, something else that came to mind was that, like, how can Beau tell?
That she's not wearing
how do you
makeup.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's a huge, like, trend that, like, men are like, we like women without makeup, but then they see, like, a woman without the makeup and they're like, no, not like that.
Not like that. Well, it's really interesting that this is still inserted into Life and Death, because in Twilight, I don't know if in Twilight Bella actually mentions that she doesn't wear makeup. I feel like she doesn't. But in Midnight Sun, Edward notices that Bella doesn't wear makeup. So it's really interesting that, like, the gender is the same, but the characters are different.
It raises this question of, like, vampire beauty standards, and, like, something that I think has been discussed online recently is, like, do you turn into, like, a societal version of what's beautiful, or do you turn into, like, a version of, like, what you think is beautiful? Because, like, if you turn into, like, your perfect beauty ideal, then no, you wouldn't need makeup.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
Because you would already have that perfection, but, like...
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too.
Or vampires that turned in, like, 1300 BC, like, for example, like, Arrow
and, like, what happens to, like, your weight if your weight doesn't conform to beauty standards at the time? Do you, like, lose a bunch of weight, or, like, do your boobs get bigger? Like, what happens?
Yeah, it's so strange. This chapter is truly, like, it's called Invitations, and it really just is people inviting Beau to the dances.
Is this the one where does Edith ask Beau if she can drive him to Seattle?
Yeah, so that's how the chapter kind of ends, is like,
okay,
do you need a ride to Seattle? I heard you're going. And Beau's like, I was just gonna take my truck. Yeah. And then Edith's like, can your truck make it to Seattle on one tank of gas? And
what a brave like offer.
Yeah.
For her to make, but like obviously she's not gonna follow through on.
Right.
So that's the end of our section. So then is the next chapter blood type?
Mm-hmm, the next chapter is blood type.
I love that chapter. It's one of my favorite chapters of Twilight. So stay tuned for our next episode, which will have been recorded a couple months ago, and we will not know the ending of the story.
Yeah, and we'll see how interesting that plays out, and, like, as far as difference in tone, and, like, you'll be back to your your better audio quality.
Spoiler alert! This book is it's great, and you should really see this
really
through to the end.
Yeah,
it's so interesting.
Yep. It's a wild ride, start to finish, much like Twilight is, but wow, it's really worth reading.
In the meantime, you can follow us on our Tumblr, bowlingsharpbellas.tumblr.com. Do you want to do your sign off?
Yeah.
Usually you do it.
I do. It's because you hate it. Okay, that's all, forks.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Gender Forking. To stay updated about the podcast or to contact us, follow us on Twitter at genderforking, or like us on Facebook at facebook.com/genderforking. For more Twilight content from us, you can follow our blog at bowlingshirtbellas.tumblr.com. If you haven't read Life and Death and you aren't reading along at home, visit bowlingshirtbellas.tumblr.com/genderforking for plot summaries and more information about the text. For other inquiries, you can email us at bowlingshirtbellas@gmail.com. The music you are hearing is Thursday in Snow Reprise by Blank Kit.